Hello and welcome to The Edge, where we'll take an in-depth analysis of today's top stories by looking beyond the edge. We'll bring you not just the facts, but also deep insights into the topics, with expert opinions and social media reactions. So let's make a start with a look beyond the edge. Israeli police released a Palestinian activist a few hours after detaining her in the occupied East Jerusalem on Sunday. The Israeli forces detained Muna al-Kurd in a raid on her home in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood, taking her to an unknown destination earlier on Sunday. Why don't world powers take action and bring these atrocities to an end? The first debate ahead of Iran's presidential election was held on Saturday, while the 5 hardline candidates attacked the 8-year performance of outgoing President Hassan Rouhani. The leading moderate candidate, former central bank chief Abdul Nasser Hemati, blamed hardliners for heightened tensions with the West that he had said had worsened Iran's economic woes. 2 more debates are scheduled before the vote. But who will be the right person to lead Iran? And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced the discovery of 135 billion cubic meters of natural gas at the Amasra 1 well in the SAKARYA gas field on Friday, demonstrating that Turkey's efforts to increase reserves and discovery of new gas has started to bear fruit. Could these discoveries change the balance of power in the region? So these are the top 3 stories that we'll be taking a look at today from Beyond the Edge. Let's get started. Palestinian activist Muna al-Kurd, who is campaigning against forced expulsions in Sheikh Jarrah, was taken to a police station after a raid on her home on Sunday. She was released several hours later. But who is Muna al-Kurd? Our following infographic explains. Israeli police briefly detained activist Muna al-Kurd, who has been at the forefront of the campaign to stop the forced expulsions of Palestinians from occupied East Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood.
On Sunday, Israeli police detained Muna al-Kurd, a prominent Palestinian activist in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood of occupied East Jerusalem, after a raid on her home. Local residents said that after the police raided the 23-year-old activist's home, she was transported by the authorities to an unknown location. Her father, Nabil al-Kurd, confirmed his daughter's detention by Israeli forces. Muna al-Kurd, who earned a degree in communications and journalism, belongs to one of 27 Palestinian families who face the threat of expulsion in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. She is one of the Palestinian women leading protests against Israel's forced expulsion and threats of displacement in Sheikh Jarrah. In April, an Israeli court ruled to evict 8 Palestinian families from their homes in the neighborhood in favor of settlement groups, triggering tension across the Palestinian territories. Israeli authorities, however, postponed giving a final decision on the expulsion orders until December, due in part to international pressure and mass protests by Palestinians. The mass protests have been fueled by rising tension in Sheikh Jarrah that reached a flashpoint on May the 10th. Rights groups fear the expulsions could still be carried out in the coming months as international attention wanes, potentially igniting another round of bloodshed.
And I'm joined live from Jerusalem by Dr. Jamal Amro, who's a Palestinian expert at Bezit University. Dr. Amro, thank you for joining us here today on The Edge.
You are welcome. Thank you.
We can see that the demonstrations, the resistance is continuing across all the Palestinian territories. Our attention was drawn, of course, recently to the attacks into Gaza, but in Sheikh Jarrah and at Al-Aqsa Mosque, the problems are continuing, which sparked the attacks into Gaza. And in the last few days, Muna al-Kurd, who's one of the activists who got the hashtag Save Sheikh Jarrah going, was arrested. What can you tell us about her arrest and why is she targeted at this time?
Okay. Not only Muna al-Kurd, but her brother, Muhammad al-Kurd, and other journalists were injured and arrested, even though. It means they started with Muna al-Kurd because she is a kind of symbol for the young people, for girls and boys who try to defend themselves and their quarter, Sheikh Jarrah, and even Al-Aqsa Mosque, and other places in Jerusalem, in Silwan, as example, or in Batn al-Hawa, and different places in Jerusalem where the Israeli forces attack the people. And the people, they don't have any weapons, they cannot protect themselves only with interviews with national and international journalists. This is why the Israelis want to close these doors. They want to separate the people under occupation and to cut them from their stories in front of the whole world. The journalists hear from young people and they hear the facts on the ground and they saw and they are seeing now what the Israeli forces planned for Al-Aqsa Mosque tomorrow and after tomorrow and even on Thursday. They are planning demonstrations for settlers and even to attack the people in Al-Aqsa Mosque, inside Al-Aqsa Mosque, and even in Sheikh Jarrah quarter. Muna al-Kurd is symboling the best, on the best way with very good English language in front of the Israelis, and she gives the facts on the ground for the journalists and for the whole world, and she described the crimes of the police against the civilians in Sheikh Jarrah. She is one of the inhabitants of Sheikh Jarrah. She was born there in a family which was born there even since more than 50 years. And even in Sheikh Jarrah, the cousin of Muna al-Kurd was killed when the Israelis, he was died after the Israelis moved him out of his house. It was the neighbor house of Muna al-Kurd house. His name was Abu Kamil al-Kurd, and his story is famous. And the Israelis know that man, he was sick and very sick. But they moved him, and before he left his house, he was dying. And Muna al-Kurd did not forget that story, and she is continuing describing these crimes for the whole world in different ways and different languages for national and international media. Yes.
That the truth gets out, and so the courage of people like Muna and her brother Mohammed are of course great examples to others. And this maybe makes it even more surprising that Israel should want to highlight their importance in the struggle, because that helps to amplify their voices and the situation. But it's not just these two, this brother and sister, these twins that are affected. Everybody in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood is under tremendous pressure. I've been hearing stories of how the Israeli police forces are conducting checks and stopping children. A child who was going to hospital for cancer treatment was constantly being giving an ID check every day, and his treatment being delayed because of that. These are just typical examples of what's going on, isn't it?
Yes. Look, sir, we want to say that right for the whole world. We cannot stop it. The whole people in the world, they have to know what happened from the Israeli policy and politics of apartheid in Sheikh Jarrah itself and in other cities and other quarters of Jerusalem. The Israelis let the settlers go inside Sheikh Jarrah, that quarter, very easy. Go inside and go out, in a very easy way. But they close it for Palestinian people. And this is kind of apartheid, really. And they close the whole quarter with barriers and with fences, with police. Nobody can enter from outside the quarter to see the quality of life, to see the old people, to see even the sick people, and even the ambulances. They cannot enter the whole quarter. The Israelis closed that quarter, and they are waiting just tomorrow for the court, for the decision of the court. If they decide to evacuate the people and the inhabitants of that quarter, they will do it with forces, with big forces. They can make this criminal act again, because they did it in the past. And they evacuate four families from their houses, and they give the houses for the settlers, the most right-wing settlers. This kind of politics did the Israelis against not Muni al-Kurd alone, but some of the journalists of national and international media were injured, and they took them to the prison, to that al-Maskoubiya, that famous and very bad prison, and they asked them a lot of questions why they came to that quarter, and it is forbidden to come back within 2 weeks. It means that the Israelis plan a very terrible things in these next 2 weeks. It could be happened if the whole world is still stumped and not doing anything against the Israelis. The Israeli steps against the quarter of Sheikh Jarrah.
Well, this is why we're keeping a focus on that. But it's not just Sheikh Jarrah, is it? It's also other villages like Beita in the West Bank, which Israel is preventing the locals from, the local Palestinians from conducting their daily lives, accessing the olive groves, destroying their properties. These things are also going on at the same time, are they not?
Yes, this is right. And we saw a lot of examples where people who is crossing or try to cross the checkpoints of the Israeli police, and they shot them die. And they died because they are civilians. And the Israelis, after that, they looked in their pockets and their bags. They did not find anything. And they said, "We are sorry, it was a mistake." But it's too late, because they shot them die. And this happened every time, and between time and time. You saw that in Al-Mghayr, in Turmusaya, in Hawara, even in Nabi Saleh, in Hebron. Everywhere the Israelis are ready, and the guns are the whole time is busy and ready to shoot the people in front of them. This is apartheid. This kind of Israeli criminal acts. Nobody in the world knows that. But in the last time, after the Israeli attack on Gaza Strip, a lot of people around the world open their eyes and ears, and they hear the facts on the ground, and they know that this is a kind of South Africa apartheid regime from the past. We have it now. It's ongoing. And these kinds of criminal acts must be stopped. And the human rights organization in the whole world must start to register these criminal acts and to put it in front of the International Court for Criminalities. And even after that, we have a lot of injured and people. More than 5,000 young people of Palestinians are in the prisons. Nobody knows about their health situation and about their life and their daily life of their families behind them. It means we have appeal for the international community to send at least controls on the Palestinian territories until we find a peace solution. If it is happened, it could not happen with kind of regime of Netanyahu, who is going to the right wings more and more. Hopefully, in 1 week, we don't find this government again. Hopefully.
Dr. Jamal Amro, thank you so much for joining us here today on The Edge. Thank you. And we're now also joined from Gaza by Akram al-Satari, who's a news reporter and translator. Akram, thank you for joining us again here today on The Edge. We've just been talking about the ongoing police actions against Palestinians in Jerusalem and the West Bank. What is the current situation right now in Gaza?
Well, the current situation in the Gaza Strip is a situation of anxiety because people are waiting and following the news about the Israeli authorities allowing to permit the flags march into the streets of Al-Quds and allowing also the settlers to demonstrate nearby the holiest places for the Muslims. There are different and conflicting news coming from the Israeli side about the Israeli government allowing the march and the Israeli security forces, the different levels, opposing that step and seeing in it an escalation that will call definitely for further escalation from the Palestinian side and would lead to a large-scale confrontation like the one that erupted in May 11th because of the Israeli moves in the city that has been putting into jeopardy the status of the city, the buildings of the cities, and the history of the city as well. So people in Gaza are on high alert now and waiting for the news about the situation in Jerusalem and are ready, as has been stated by different people in the Gaza Strip, to sacrifice if it takes them to sacrifice for the sake of showing solidarity and support for the people in not only Sheikh Jarrah, but in the old city of Jerusalem at large.
Now, of course, the march that has been planned by the right-wing extremists for Thursday, which they called a March of Flags, as you rightly say, is very provocative action. And hopefully there have been talks of banning this. The police currently haven't given authorization. Hopefully that sticks. But this, of course, as you mentioned, is very important because it was the events, the attacks on people of Sheikh Jarrah as well as Al-Aqsa Mosque, which sparked off the recent conflict. In Gaza, which is many miles away, the people of Gaza, however, are in solidarity with all Palestinians. That's a right assessment, isn't it?
Yes, that's the right assessment. People of Gaza paid the price and the invoice of being Palestinians and paid also the price and the invoice of proving to the whole world that Palestine is one integral part. When people of Gaza were fought by the Israeli occupation, when they were bombarded because the leadership of the resistance in the Gaza Strip and also the different segments of the community were voicing their solidarity and were translating that solidarity into a parade of rockets that were hitting Western Jerusalem, and an indication that Palestine is one geographical unit, and that the occupation has failed miserably in dividing the people of that land and into turning them into cantons or separated geographical zones. Gazans made the invoice. Gazans made the point that Palestine as a whole is one integrated piece of land, and that Palestinians in the different parts of that land are all together in that struggle against the occupation. That might be very deep and very philosophical, but that's the truth the whole world has seen, and that's the truth that is bonding together all the Palestinians now in East Jerusalem, in West Bank, and in Gaza. So Gaza has been in solidarity. Gaza has been fighting for the sake of defending Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and also for the dignity of the people in Sheikh Jarrah.
Well, it's good to see people standing up, united as one. Let's hope the world continues to stand more strongly in the future, united alongside the Palestinians. Akram al-Satari, thank you so much for joining us here today on The Edge. Now, on Monday night,
Thank you for having me.
On Monday night, dozens of Israeli forces stormed the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood and assaulted Palestinian families, beating them and firing tear gas and sound bombs at them. In recent months, the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood has seen a series of sit-ins by Palestinians to protest against Israeli orders for them to vacate their homes, which they have described as a continuation of the ethnic cleansing that began with the Nakba in 1948. We will see if the Israeli forces' assaults continue and how the international community decides to react. But for now, let's move to Iran to speak about upcoming presidential elections. Iranians are due to choose a new president this month at a pivotal time for the country, both at home and abroad. Much has changed in the 4 years since the last election, and our following infographic presents the key reasons why this election will be closely watched. Seven candidates who qualified to run in Iran's 18th June presidential elections have gone head-to-head in a televised debate amid controversy over the disqualification of other hopefuls.
Candidates in Iran's presidential election this month traded strong barbs in a debate, accusing each other of treason or of lacking the education to run an economy devastated by 3 years of US sanctions.
در نگاه اقتصادی مردم و محرومین در اولویت نبودند.
While the 5 hardline candidates attacked the 8-year performance of outgoing President Hassan Rouhani, the leading moderate candidate, former central bank chief Abdul Nasser Hemati, blamed hardliners for heightened tensions with the West.
وضعیت اقتصادی ایران در شرایط فعلی طوریه که اغلب وعده‌های رنگارنگ و جذابی که بقیه نامزدان میدن امکان تحقق نداره.
The election is likely to reinforce the authority of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who is close to the hardliners at a time when Tehran and 6 world powers are trying to revive their 2015 nuclear deal.
So candidates in Iran's presidential election this month traded strong barbs in a debate on Saturday, accusing each other of treason or of lacking the education to run an economy devastated by 3 years of US sanctions. On the one hand, there were the 5 hardline candidates who attacked the 8-year performance of outgoing President Hassan Rouhani. The leading moderate candidate, former central bank chief Abdul Nasser Hemati, blamed hardliners, on the other hand, for heightening tensions with the West that he said had worsened Iran's economic woes. This was the first of 3 debates ahead of the election on the 18th of June. Former Revolutionary Guards Chief Mohsen Razai accused Hemati of fully complying with US sanctions and said that he should face treason charges. And we're now joined live from Tbilisi in Georgia by Arash Aziz, who's an Iranian writer and historian at New York University. Arash, thank you for joining us today here on The Edge. So, the Iranian presidential elections to be held in just over 2 weeks. The first of 3 presidential debates was held on Saturday. Well, what's your take on the debate?
I think it's very clear that Mr. Raisi is the front runner. He's the establishment favorite, and all his notable rivals were thrown out. In the debate, we saw what we had seen 4 years ago also, that Raisi is really not a debater, frankly. That he doesn't have what it takes really to perform in a debate. He doesn't have that charisma, and he doesn't have experience. You know, he hasn't had jobs. He's always worked in judiciary. He has rarely had jobs that requires public speaking. So he didn't impress much. The candidates that are centrist and backed by some reformists, chiefly Hemati, who used to be a central bank governor, I think he showed that he is, he has some economic planning. He knows in what dire economic straits Iran is. So if you wanted to judge on the merits, it was clear that the conservative candidates, which was almost all of them, were basically using populist talking points about the economy, whereas Hemati had some real economic plans. But I don't think that will convince people to go out and vote, since Hemati is a sort of a centrist bureaucrat and wasn't one of the main candidates of the reformist or the centrist side even.
But one of the interesting things to come up was the onslaught from some of the hardliners accusing Hemati of treason. Is that something to be taken seriously, or is that just debate bluster?
Well, they have, they've already thrown out sort of all the major candidates, but even someone like Hemati, who was central bank governor, who is a sort of a pretty mild-mannered figure, is still attacked. I think the treason calls came especially because Hemati defends Iran necessity for Iran to collaborate with FATF, Financial Action Task Force, which has put Iran on its blacklist due to money laundering accusations. The conservatives in Iran are opposed to this. The centrists are in favor of it. And this will basically help Iran be more financially transparent, which is not good news for IRGC and for all those who want to send guns and money to Hezbollah and Hamas and other sort of groups in the region. So yeah, that explains some of the ferocious attacks that Hemati has suffered since the debate.
Of course, for any candidate that's in opposition to Rouhani, the current economic woes, the galloping inflation, the fall in the Iranian currency, the value of the Iranian currency, these are great talking points for a debate. Do they have solutions to these problems, however?
Look, the reality of the situation is that Iran's dire economic straits will only be solved by a radical change in its foreign policy. I mean, that's one of the number one things. Yes, the sanctions need to be lifted, but that's just the first step. Even if the talks may not get somewhere, Iran needs a different foreign policy and different priorities in foreign policy, which also means a different relationship with the rest of the world and reintegration into the global economy. So the short answer is that no, the conservative, everyone acknowledges it's one of the crazy things about Iranian politics is that people who have all the power, the factions that control 80–90% of the power, always talk as if they're in opposition. They criticize the status quo very fervently sometimes. If you look at the campaign videos of some of them, they very fervently they criticize all the existing policies. But who is responsible for these policies? The same political factions. So it becomes a personality point. If you look at, for example, someone like Qazizadeh Hashemi, one of the marginal conservative candidates, his campaign video, it's basically a case that, oh, I can do it now. No one else has, and he doesn't say how, or with what policies. The only sort of real policies left are populist, giveaways here and there. So Qazizadeh Hashemi, whose picture you're actually showing right now, said that he will give certain amount of money to all the young couples who want to get married for sort of a housing benefit, which is a good policy perhaps on its own, but it's not always followed on. And anyways, a couple of giveaways don't make an economic policy, especially for Iran, which is in some of the worst economic shape it's ever been.
Well, we've seen the field of candidates narrow down to just 7, and more than the majority of those being what have been described as hardline candidates, might perhaps more in line with the way that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei might be thinking. Will the people come out and vote? And how important is Khamenei's stamp of approval for any particular candidate?
Well, the candidates that are allowed to run, as you said yourself, are already sort of approved by Khamenei. The field has already narrowed down enough, I believe. Will people go out and vote? I think my answer so far is no. I think this will have the lowest turnout in the history of Iran. If they reported accurately, I think the actual turnout will be something like 40%, 45% at most, if not less. And I think they're prepared for this. This is not something that I'm saying. If you look at all the Iranian media now, even the conservative media, day and night, they're talking about this. In fact, the spokesperson for the Guardian Council went out and said, well, if we don't have a high turnout, that doesn't mean the votes are not legitimate. Personally, I've never seen elections boycotted by someone. In my family, I think I only know one person voting, whereas last time around, I voted and many other people voted. And I have to say, my grandmother, who has voted her entire life, and it used to be pretty devoted to Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the regime, that even she's not voting. So it's a really increasing phenomenon and the reason people are not voting is that they're just sick of politicians. I mean, they believe that they don't seem to have a real say in their lives, not just because the candidates were disqualified, but because President Rouhani also really didn't follow up on much of what he said he would do. So I think you're going to have, there are some people who are pushing for a vote, some people on the reformist side are pushing for a vote for Hemmati or Mehralizadeh actually. And all good luck to them, but I don't think they'll convince a lot of people to go out and vote.
Well, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks, and there are more debates to come. Arash Azizi, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your analysis. Thank you. The new president will replace Hassan Rouhani, who twice won landslide votes against hardline opponents after campaigning to open up Iran's economy to the world. Rouhani had only limited success after the US abandoned the nuclear agreement and reimposed sanctions. Most of the candidates have put forward proposals about how they intended to boost production and help the poor. Iranians have less than 2 weeks to decide on their country's future. For now, let's move on to our final topic to discuss Turkey's successful energy policy. After the natural gas discovery last year in the SAKARYA gas field, the first results of the drilling and new exploration of wells are being obtained. Our following infographic has more facts. Turkey's drive to become an independent energy hub in the region looks to be on track as government officials announce that the capacity of the gas discovered in offshore reserves is set to increase.
Biz de yeni bir müjdeyi daha paylaşıyoruz. Heyecanlıyım. Fatih sondaj gemimiz yine Sakarya gaz sahasındaki Amasra 1 kuyusunda hazırsanız 135 milyar metreküplük yeni bir doğal gaz keşfi daha yaptı. Hayırlı olsun. Hayırlı olsun.
The increasing exploration and drilling efforts for new wells after Turkey's FATIH drill ship discovered 405 billion cubic metres of natural gas in the Black Sea is to bear fruits with further gas volumes. FATIH drilled Türkali 1 and Türkali 2 testing wells after the big discovery, along with the Amasra 1 well, which is an exploration well. Testing and exploration drills will likely result in new additional gas reserves. The discovery of new oil and gas reserves gives a country more power in international relations. When a country has huge oil and gas reserves, it is able to extract, consume and supply energy in the global market. In other words, the power comes from the fact that energy-consuming countries are dependent on the supplier country. Turkey's Black Sea gas find was the largest offshore gas discovery in the world last year, while it was the second largest in overall findings. The potential economic value of Turkey's discovery is around $80 billion. Another drill ship, the Kanuni, is currently carrying out completion tests at the Türkali 2 well, while Fatih is drill testing the well of Türkali 3. First gas production from Sakarya gas field is planned for 2023. Around 155 kilometres of the pipeline will be built from underneath the sea to Filyos onshore in Zonguldak, a port city in the Black Sea. As a start, the daily gas production from the field will be around 10 million cubic metres, which correspond to 3.5 billion cubic metres annually. The production will increase gradually, reaching 40 million cubic metres per day, making around 14 to 15 billion cubic metres of gas production yearly. This marks the plateau period of the field when it reaches maximum production capacity, which is estimated to be around 2027 to 2028. As an important dependent country, Turkey imported 48 BCM of natural gas last year, with a growth of 6.5% compared to the previous year. The discovery of new energy sources by Turkey will give Ankara an upper hand in future gas import contracts with other countries, and it will be able to steer the conditions in the contracts in a favourable direction.
I'm now joined live from Washington, D.C. by Omid Shokri, who's an energy security analyst. Omid, thank you for joining us today here on The Edge. Great excitement in Turkey last year with the discovery of increased amounts of gas in the Black Sea. Well, what can you tell us about the new discovery and the importance for Turkey?
Thanks for having me. As you know, when Zostican development came to power, trying to use energy relation with the neighbors to increase the trade volume and also to boost economic relation, and also try to create balance in the economic relation, and also focus on interdependency in its relation with major energy supplier for Turkey, such as Iran, Russia, Azerbaijan, and other LNG suppliers, such as Qatar, US, and Algeria. And when last year Turkey announced that it forms a new national discovery in the Black Sea, and also last week the Turkish President Erdogan said that Turkey find another natural resource in the Black Sea. This discovery both together could help Turkey in the first step being more sufficient from supplying energy from domestic resources, and also it could help it to be a key player in energy equation and key player in regional energy dynamics, and it also could help it to be more to be energy transit in the first step, and also in the mid-term and long-term to be energy trade and energy hub in the region. Turkey has a good potential, and Turkey is located in the area that about 70% of oil and gas produced from there, and Turkey can be supply all required from this region, and also act as an energy transit and energy hub. And also Turkey needs to more invest in energy infrastructure and also try to liberalize natural gas market. This both together could help Turkey to gain more from energy equation in the region, and energy discovery in the Black Sea if continue, and Turkey can find measure natural gas in oil and Black Sea and also in East Mediterranean. We can see in the next decade Turkey play more active role in regional energy security and also in EU energy security as well, and also try to boost its influence in the region.
So Turkey is already a very important energy hub with the various pipelines that are between Russia and also Georgia and so on, joining to Europe. But this new find is particularly beneficial for the domestic market as well, isn't it? How will that affect Turkey?
Yes, as you mentioned, Turkey importing natural gas from the majority pipeline and from the LNG vessel from Qatar, Algeria, and the U.S. But from domestic perspective, if Turkey could be able to bring natural gas from the Black Sea in coming year, and mainly in 2023, in the 100th anniversary of establishing of Turkey Republic, Turkey could be more sufficient, and it could help me to decrease dependency of natural gas imported from Russia, from Iran, and from Azerbaijan as well. As you know, the current contract between Iran and Turkey will be expired by 2026. This discovery could help Turkey to have upper hand in extension of current contract, and Iran has to give more opportunity for Turkey and maybe give natural gas to Turkey with cheaper price, and also could permit Turkey to re-export natural gas imported, part of natural gas imported from the Iran. And also in Turkey has the upper hand in future contract with Azerbaijan, Russia, and maybe other countries to give natural gas with low price, and maybe, as I mentioned before, could ask the major supplier to re-export some amount of natural gas imported by pipeline from Turkey to EU and other countries in the region.
Well, one of the very exciting things about Turkey's energy policy is it doesn't just rely on one source of energy. It doesn't just rely on natural gas. It also uses nuclear, or will be using nuclear, hydroelectric, solar, wind, and so on and so forth. This will surely, in the years to come, give Turkey tremendous self-confidence, and that will no doubt affect its role in the region.
You know, as you mentioned, diversification of energy resource is the main pillar of Turkey foreign policy and also Turkey energy policy. When Statistics and Development came to power, tried to decrease dependency of foreign research and also tried to focus on attracting more financial resources and technology from other countries to bring all potential from domestic to domestic market. Turkey has a very good potential in solar and offshore wind energy, and during this last year and 2 years ago, Turkey made huge investment in, again, coast and other region, and also in solar technology and solar power plant. Also, Turkey holds a good technology potential in establishing nuclear power, solar power plant, and also production solar panel, and it could help it to be exporter of technology in renewable energy, and also try to supply what he needs in establishing and construction solar power plant. And also, as you mentioned, Turkey is trying to be used by nuclear energy by construction of Akkuyu nuclear power plant, and also another maybe building the Sinop region. All together could help Turkey to be more sufficient in energy, and if Turkey could use all potential, domestic potential, Turkey will be able to export more energy to other countries.
This is bringing great opportunities to Turkey and literally energizing it as it moves forward. Omid Chokri, thank you so much for joining us today here on The Edge and giving us your analysis. Thank you. The discovery of new energy sources by Turkey will give Ankara an upper hand in future gas import contracts with other countries. They'll be able to steer the conditions in the contracts in a favourable direction. So our analysts have provided their insights on today's top stories. Let's have a roundup of what they said. And before closing our programme, let's have a look at social media to hear your voices and reactions on today's top stories with Miriam Carlson.
Thank you, Andy. Hello, we are taking a look at some of today's trending topics on social media. And today the hashtag is Muna Al-Kurd. And let's see what the first one is saying here. It comes from Bea, and she says, "We don't get scared. This is the political muscling, threatening and silencing us. But alhamdulillah for everything, it's all good. We don't get scared." And this was what Muna Al-Kurd said after her release. Moving on, and let's see the next one. Comes from Barry Morgan, and here says, "Here comes my hero. The brave youth, the brave woman, Muna Al-Kurd is the founder of campaign. Her heroic brother, Mohammed Al-Kurd, went to the police station to detain himself. He wanted to negotiate about the release of his sister. That's a true brother of love." And taking another one comes from Riz saying, "I am so glad Mohammed Al-Kurd and Muna Al-Kurd are back to safe and sound. They have a long and tedious battle to come. But for now, let's celebrate this win too." And now we're moving on to taking a look at the video of the day. And this shows an atrocity experienced by Palestinians who live under occupation.
ده بيتي أنا مش بيت شيلي بيتي أنا.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No.
إذا المحكمة يعني فرضت علينا الإحلال ما لنا مكان إلا الأرصفة.
الأقصى الآن عبارة عن ساحة حرب. في قناص فوق. ارجع لورا صفر. إطلاق الغاز في داخل المسجد الأقصى وقنابل الصوت وآلاف من الرصاص المطاطي. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
العالم ماذا يا أبا ماذا يا أبا سيبتش العالم يا أبا ماذا يا أبا.
في فلسطين يسلب منك الاحتلال كل شيء، كل شيء. بيتك، عينيك، عائلتك، طفولتك، عاصمتك. وعندما تريد التعبير عن ذلك يحضرونك.
And this is all for me for now. Back to Andy.
And that's all for this episode of The Edge with me, Andy Boyns. Stay tuned as we'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth analysis on the top stories and a look beyond the edge.